Hi, I'm Chloe Canning. Welcome back for Season 2 on Lead with Courage. Illuminate Leadership acknowledges the traditional custodians of the land, which we would call this podcast the Yagara and Terrible People. We pay respect to the elders past, present, and emerging.
Welcome to Lead with Courage, the podcast that celebrates the bold and inspiring stories of leaders making a difference. We're your hosts, Andy and Cherie Canning, and together we'll dive into the minds of the trailblazers, the risk takers, and those who embrace life with a growth mindset. So welcome back to the Lead with Courage podcast, and I'm very excited to welcome back to the hot seat Mandy Dudson, our Head of Learning and Development.
Hello, it's lovely to be back.
Welcome back. I think last time we had you on, the episode was with Brent Tate. Now, that conversation, whilst us gushing over what an incredible human he is, has also really brought up this conversation around feedback. And his episode is called Ask for More Feedback, or We Need More Feedback. Tell us, what are your thoughts around the feedback? And then let's have a bit of a conversation so we can help our listeners.
Yes, it's something I hear so common. I hear a lot in our workshops is we want more feedback. We want more feedback. And it's valuable to have frameworks to deliver feedback, but I think that some leaders really struggle to give feedback because they're not actually creating these moments to observe their team doing their job. So if we look at feedback, there's skills-based feedback, and then there's feedback based on tasks or how they show up every day. And I think that a different approach needs to be taken, or a different framework needs to be used with each of those types of feedback. But when it comes to skills-based feedback, people want to know, what am I doing well? What do I need to improve on? And for a leader to be able to give really specific feedback, not just, oh yeah, you're doing great, because I'm sure we've all had that we've all asked for feedback where, hey, how am I doing? Oh yeah, you're doing great. Keep it up.
Keep doing what you're doing.
Keep doing what you're doing. And like, sorry, but that, what can you do with that?
Not a lot. It feels good for the first time, but then maybe the second, the third one, what you want to grow and improve. What do you do with that feedback?
Yes. Absolutely, absolutely. So as leaders, it is so easy to get caught up in the day-to-day of your role, the operations, the HR battles, or this new shiny change that we need to roll out. But so when we get caught up in all of that, what seems to be the first thing to be forgotten is, I just need to spend quality time in the trenches with my team, watching them, observing them do their job. So that way I can give them feedback that is really specific, that's going to make an impact for them. Like they'll hear what they're really nailing, because we all need to know what we're doing well, because as human beings, we will repeat behaviours that we're acknowledged for. And they also need to know real specifics on, okay, well, what is it exactly that I need to work on, I need to tweak, and how can I improve in that area?
Yeah, totally. And one of the things when you're saying about the small moments and the behaviours that we'll then keep repeating, it reminds me of one of my favourite little quotes about catch people out doing the right thing. So often I feel that people give feedback in a place of frustration or when there's a lack, which is also important. We also have that reminder to tell people the things that we might assume they already know. They already know they bring this great attitude into the office, or they already know that their energy is something that lifts the whole team up. How often do we actually stop and say, hey, what I love about you, or what I appreciate about you, what I notice about you, what we can call on you for every time is that energy you bring into the office. I think those moments are often missing. And then when we have the constructive feedback, the corrective feedback, the growth feedback, notice I don't say negative feedback, but in any of those moments of the growth feedback, we've got that basis of trust that you've built with that relationship. So it's often then taken in a lot more of an appreciative way, because there's a balance between here's the confirming feedback, here's the growth feedback.
Yes. And I agree with what you're saying around sometimes leaders are like, oh, they know that. They know they're doing a good job. But what's really interesting is we've been running our Impact Player workshop, and part of that workshop, there's a list of questions that each person needs to answer for themselves. They also, before they answer those questions, they're related to, like, what do I do really well? Like, what do I do better than other people? And but before they answer those questions for themselves, they go and ask their teammates what that answer is. And so often they go, oh my gosh, I didn't realize that that's what people see as my strength, as my superpower and what I do. And it's really, really powerful. So it just highlights we have to tell people what they're doing well so that they can really lean into that.
100%. And then when you add into the layers of imposter syndrome and people, the amount of burnout and people are feeling fatigued, sometimes actually just that moment of this is what you're doing well and we appreciate you for that. It doesn't eliminate that feeling, but it absolutely adds in that, yes, I'm on the right track, or that boost of confidence for people.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. What about you? What do you think we need to work on when it comes to giving more feedback?
There's so many elements. One of the things that I feel is an important one to mention is around how do we react when we deliver feedback. So I think it's one, how do we react when we receive feedback? Also, as the deliverer of feedback, how do you respond? And so what I am thinking here is there's 3 automatic, very common ways that people react with feedback, and it's the 3 Ds. We get into defensive mode. We want to explain and justify why that happened, which is human. We deny it, whether we don't see that it was real for us, or we deflect and, but if so-and-so had have done this thing over here, or, well, that wasn't so bad, and whatever it may be, that deny, deflect, defend. When we're delivering feedback, if we can take a minute and take a breath when someone responds with that, not to then retaliate. I feel like if I know back on myself and I reflect on the years gone by with feedback, I think then I'll want to justify why I've said the feedback when they've gotten defensive, and then you just think this trigger or this activation just explodes and builds and builds. When in fact, if we can just allow people, okay, this is an automatic defense for so many people, be compassionate, hold the space, let them empty their bucket of the justification. Often it's coming from a place of fear that they're not enough, they haven't given enough, they've let you down. So it's not coming out of spite or nastiness. Just allow them to get it out, and then we can start discussing the strategies moving forward.
Yes, I agree. Good advice. What about receiving feedback? Because I think giving feedback is such, like, that's one skill.
Yes.
I almost feel like it's a skill to receive feedback as well. What's your advice?
Well, the feedback I've been given from Andy about the way I receive feedback is that I'm terrible at, but obviously that's not true. No.
Well, I'll give you some feedback on that.
Feedback on the feedback. Look, it's a great question, and it's a skill. I believe that feedback in both directions is a skill, isn't it? First and foremost is just to stay curious, because then when someone's perspective is their perspective and the piece of what they've seen is their reality. So if we can approach it with generous assumptions, I truly believe it takes people courage to actually decide to step up and give someone feedback. So if someone, whether it's your leader, a peer, a partner, a friend, has found the courage and the respect for you to say something, I truly believe it's because they care. And 99.9% of the time that's true. So if we can remember that when we're receiving feedback and get curious, if it doesn't land, I often get asked these questions in workshops, I'm sure you do too. What if I don't agree with the feedback? You don't have to take everything on, but what I'd say is to check in. Is it my ego saying no, or is it a clash of values or beliefs?
Or my inner critic trying to protect me.
Protect me, precisely. So then if it's okay, that surprises me, with a calm voice and actually saying, wow, that feedback, I haven't heard that before, that surprises me. Can you help me understand where you've seen that so that I can do something with it? That's a very different reaction to, well, when did that happen?
Yes.
But that tone and that curiosity versus defensiveness, and always, always, always say thank you. Because even in that moment, if it's hard to hear or it might not align in that moment, it is truly a gift. Every time someone gives, it's a different perspective that unlocks some awareness for us. and to always thank someone for the feedback.
Yeah, because it's not easy to deliver feedback and have someone on the receiving end react, and it can make the person delivering the feedback close off from wanting to give them feedback ever again.
That's it. And so I think we've got a responsibility of how we receive the feedback. I also believe from the deliverer of feedback is to consider how activated or your energy at that moment. If you're coming from a place of frustration, this is the 6th time someone's done that thing again, that isn't the time to deliver the feedback. If you're disappointed in something, if you're tired and exhausted, it's not the time for the feedback. I think stop, think, and ask yourself, is this timely? Are we bringing up something from 3 months ago that's changed? If so, that's not the time. Is it helpful? So is this actually going to help grow someone in the future? And is it changeable? So often I make a joke, reference, and to podcast listeners, they might not have seen me in real life, but I'm not a very tall woman. So if somebody said to me, Shez, you're a bit short, like I can't do it. I can wear some heels, maybe. I can't do anything about that. If somebody said to me, you speak too fast, sure, I can work on that. But how often do we give feedback on things that actually are fixed rather than tangible for people?
Yes. And just to build on what you were saying there.
About my height? Sorry, I'm throwing you down.
I can't comment on that because I'm probably about 1 centimetre taller than you. But just to build on that, I think something where I've gone wrong in the past and learnt from is just considering, well, what are my intentions before I go into delivering this feedback?
100%.
I like to do an intention check and tell myself, okay, my intentions in this moment when I give this person feedback is I am doing this because I truly want to see them succeed. I want to see them grow. I want them to get that promotion that they're after, or hit that target that they're striving towards, or get that goal. And when I do that intention check, that then comes through in the conversation. Like your intention impacts your body language, your tone of voice, the words you even choose to use in that moment. And that the person on the receiving the feedback can feel all of that.
Yeah.
They feel your intention.
I completely agree. And even if it's just to regulate your nervous system because you're a bit nervous that they might take offense, or it might be hard for them to hear, but by checking in on, for what reason am I saying this? This is for the benefit of this person because I truly care. And it reminds me of the radical candor model around I care personally and I'm going to challenge directly. And that's where I really believe, we all need to strive for when it comes to giving and receiving feedback. And feedback doesn't have to be this and shouldn't be this annual, biannual, quarterly event. It's micro pieces to keep people growing.
Yes, totally. And my other probably one additional tip on receiving feedback is there's so much power in closing the feedback loop.
Yes, I love this one.
Yeah. So how often do you receive feedback and then a month later or a couple of weeks later go back and check in with that person who gave you that feedback to say, hey, you gave me this feedback. This is what I did. This is how it impacted me. This is how it impacted others. This is what I'm going to do next. Thank you again for that feedback. Because by checking back in and closing that feedback loop, letting them know what you've done with that information, that feedback, it encourages that person to want to give you more feedback.
Yeah, I agree. And I think we've got a real life example of that when that feedback loop we spoke about in one of our workshops with impact players. And more recently, I was retelling that story in the Gift of Feedback workshop. And the example I gave was some feedback you gave me and how then I needed to close the loop. And
not about your height. It had nothing to do about your height.
About how fast I speak. No, no, absolutely. It was around our weekly meetings. And often the weekly meetings that we have, they were very unstructured. It was the one opportunity per week that we would all have present time together. And often the way my brain's working, I've got this idea and let's talk about this. And that goes on to another tangent over here. And that's all lovely. But if we've got an hour to an hour and a half on an agenda for a weekly meeting, we weren't hitting the mark. And the feedback you gave me was, Shez, we could make this more streamlined, more efficient. And at the time, of course, you go, oh, I really should be doing that, and I wish I was, and oh, why wasn't I? And maybe being a bit hard on myself. But no, in the moment, so what I did with the feedback being the second step was then delegated, empowered you. But this, for Mandy, this was something you were really great at. And so, okay, well, would you like to be part of this? And you said yes. And so then the next step is, what improved as a result? We had a really structured, streamlined weekly business meeting agenda. Like, this is not rocket science, but this is a prime example of, I was just running through the motions. You took it on. We've improved that. And then what's the next step is, how has this helped others? So then it allows, when we have Bet come in, when we have other people come and join us, we know the mark we're going to hit, who's speaking first, what we need to prepare. And then what I've learned and what I've going to do next is like never run another meeting. I'll attend the meetings and I'll hijack them that way. But most certainly is then on our planning days and our innovation days, you're often the person who's structuring the agenda so that we keep to track. And I'll still bring what I bring, energy and ideas and conversation, and then bringing that with and collaboration with the great structure you've had. So for me to you, I'm so grateful for that. Otherwise, we would still be in last Monday's meeting still 3 days later.
And I'd be about to give you some more feedback on that. Oh.
So I would love if there's nothing else anyone takes from our little micro episode today on feedback, is to reflect on the way that you receive feedback. Consider that. There might be some listeners here who say, well, no one ever gives me feedback. So there's one of two things. Who are you asking? Ask someone who's in the arena, someone you value their opinion. Ask for specific feedback with good pointed questions so people can give it to you. If the answer is I'm still not getting any, potentially you've got to look on the reflection of, well, how have you reacted in the past? So maybe people are afraid to give you feedback, or they're not feeling safe to do so. But if that is being all well and said, is go and ask for feedback and then check in on the loop. So if there's nothing else, is think about the feedback you have received and encourage people to go back and close that feedback loop, share what you've done with it, share how it's impacted you. That would create an incredible ripple effect from this conversation.
Yes. And for the leaders listening, diarise time, pop time in your calendar that is solely devoted to getting in the trenches with your people and observing them do their job so that you can have valuable, specific feedback to give them to help them grow.
Yes, and remember, catch people out doing the right thing.
Yes.
Beautiful.
Well, thanks
We'd
for
love
the
feedback
chat.
on the chat. If anyone enjoyed that, let us know. If you didn't, also let us know. But yeah, thanks for coming on, Mandy. It's great to have a chat, and let's go to Lewis some feedback.
Love it. Thanks for having me. See you next time.
See you next time. Thanks for joining us on the Lead with Courage podcast. We illuminate leadership, and it's our mission to inspire and grow the leaders of today to create a better tomorrow. We hope and trust that this episode has given you some insights and joy to empower you to live your biggest, best life. If you did enjoy the episode, we'd be so grateful for you to rate and share wherever you listen to this podcast. And until next time, go and lead with courage.